Before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to just pause for a few seconds to pay special memory to the tragic terrorist attack that our nation experienced 23 years ago, and to honor the thousands of lives lost, not only on that day, but the ensuing weeks and months and years. So just take a moment to respect and honor those people. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
Stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Jesse.
Mary, here. Ben,
Really?
Mitch, here. Peterson, here. Fish.
Our open meeting act is posted on the south wall. The city of Grant adheres to that. I do not have any guests. This meeting is being recorded, and if we do have guests, we would ask that they come to the podium and state their name and their address for the record. We will most likely adhere to the agenda tonight, but at any time we may go into executive session as needed. Oh, I forgot to call us an order. We're called order at 6:03. All right, I'm going to open the public meeting at 6:03. And this is for the budget, the final tax request for fiscal year 2024, 2025.
Introduce Tracy Cannon with AMGL, again here with us again, so we appreciate her making the trek out here. Yeah, she's provided us with some documents. We did have the final changes that we talked about yesterday with the changes to the water, sewer, and FEMA funds. She's provided us with 3 documents that were up there with the notice summary of change, the new flow sheets, and then the new budget form and accountant's compilation report. So appreciate the remind for us.
Lead the way.
For the page 1 of the tax summary, and I think that I've got the changes. This one again. So we start with the cash from the audit for 10/1/23, estimated revenues, expenditures, and then the budgeted revenues, expenditures, and transfers. Total expenditures that in transfers that were budgeted is $7,362,323. This is down from last year's budgeted expenditures of $8,052,069. And then total will end up being $6,212,026. That's what that's needed. The next page is the history of the valuation of the lease. Our valuation went from 86 million to 88 million, so $2 million increase, which was 2.33%. The property tax request remained the same at $336,000. And with the increase in the valuation, that then decreased the levy from 38.9 cents to 38.02 cents, which is about a 2% decrease overall. There's just some different allocations between the debt service and the general. Needs to work with me. Presentation first. And then, because there were changes made after the notice was like, when you adopt, so I think it's gonna be different than what was published, so then there'll just be a notice that you have to publish. That's one that you should get. So. Just open that publishing, put on it. What's your changes, so just those big sheet, so we're gonna plan. No, any questions? Did any of the council have any questions? No, we'll take the court meeting within 15 minutes. Most important meeting of the entire year.
Legislature even tried to make it easier for people to attend by requesting that they're mandating that it's a separate meeting, so. On the lack of effort, you people.
This is a nice report you do for us.
But Mayor, I think really the interesting thing here is on comparative evaluations and monies. Those year after year, you guys are striving to continue to reduce that overall rating expense and money what we have in bond itself. After that is, we're 3, 4, 5 years going downhill. So it shows the efforts you guys have put into prioritize reducing the impact of property taxes to citizens of Brands.
Yeah. Maintaining their cash reserves.
Yeah, our account is over, so we had.
Good try to spin it all, this is like, whoa.
And touch just on the additional 1% increase and what effect it would be if we can improve it and things.
That'd be last year, but without computation based on 1134.
Right, this will be the last year. Of. This
Page 2 on this.
line.
In the. Okay.
And so you're allowed, they have your restricted funds authority from the prior year. You're all, I don't know, if I allow 2.5%. And if your value attributable to growth is more than 2.5%, then that additional increase by also. And then you can vote for additional percent. And we always recommend the additional 1%, just in case, you have like a jump in community property taxes or something. It doesn't mean that you have to increase your property taxes, it's just there in case you need it. But your restricted funds are like the property tax tax, or vehicle tax, highway allocation, any transfers of surplus fees, and then you have your lit exceptions. intermediate and local agreements. Your capital improvements that are taken over with restricted funds, we can bucket that associated with restricted funds.
Then maybe if you, so now if you wanna share, the bond council shared last night, the impact of the bonds from LB 34, but.
He's not sure on the.
No, I mean, from an audit side of LB 34, I was just telling you, the
Oh,
bond council shared last night with us some of the changes as we first. Maybe you wanted to touch on some of it as change of auditing, up to and all.
this is kind of look at required. So when they put this in place for cities, they had, like, where you automatically get the 2% increase in your property tax from last year, and then your real growth percentage increase. And so then that sets your amount that you can expect for your property tax. So next year, that 2% will go to either 0 or the consumer price index is what that'll be instead. And that you're just kind of limited to those increases unless it's like for a bond issue, or I think there's something in there about public safety. But otherwise, you're gonna be limited, restricted on what you can increase your tax rates by.
There's still quite a bit of gray area. They did not, and obviously we still have time. To draft the actual statute language that gets past the LB, but they did not address when they were going to. Actually, what CPI they were going to use, when they were going to get that information or any of that, so there's still some unknown there. For example, August CPI was just released, it was 2.5%. But they per se were going to use August, that number would be 2.5%.
Okay.
Right,
And I don't know that it's ever really under 2% in years.
And when will we know what number they use, like what?
we won't,
We won't.
until they release that metric. That's not being allowed intervals.
And then that very
CPI is a
every
quarter.
year?
That is roughly the average.
Yeah.
In the year.
This point, postcard was still.
Has very many communities had to do the postcard? That you know.
Last year there was a lot, this year, there were quite a few. But I'd say maybe 75% probably still for this one.
And what is the cost for a community when they have to do?
So they didn't, I don't think they charged last year, so. I'm not sure, I haven't seen any charges yet, but I'm sure they'll charge this year. I'm sure it's just the first year. I'm sure it'll.
It's based on the number of actual mailers that have to go out. Who's on the postcard and how it gets split, whether it's 2 ways or 3 ways.
It could be county, city, and
School.
school.
Colleges are now exempt, but. We're flash.
Hopefully we don't have to do that next year. But you don't know?
Misty, can you remind me where we put in the budget, in the capital outlay to work on that parking lot over there? The building parking lot, can you remind me exactly which spots that
Yeah.
capital outlay is in?
In the general fund. Okay. You put in the royal for donation, 150,000. Offset it in the expense, right? That,
For 150?
yeah,
So which part of that? I mean, what part of that, what was it, the 450 or what was?
that's just, if we set it as a marker number, we didn't know how much it was gonna be or anything, so that's, we just put a marker number in there. If there's anything else that would be, we'll have it potentially in there, so we just. I don't know, talked about it and didn't know exactly didn't know how donations and things would potentially be, so.
So it's not actually in our budget, it actually has to come in from their memorial and donations, it's not in our. It can't be used unless it actually comes in.
So then in the economic development. We're doing that, transport of electric, which should be out. Which is, for downtown revitalization. So we could utilize that for rehab or. Piece whatever you.
Okay, so the 50,000 transfer from the electric is what we talked about. Is that's what was put in to help with those. Whatever it is.
If you think we're gonna need all that for rehabilitation, how you're there. So if that's where, yes,
Okay, thank you.
we talked to Tracy and she thought that the sale should potentially go through the general fund that way. Insurance. And there's other options, ways that they may do it, that we won't even have it through here, you know, they run it to a different entity, and they just don't get it over to the city. Or something like that, but this would play, put it in just for what it.
City is involved. Purchase. Then we can't just give a donation from our general fund to them to have them give it back, can we?
Then it'll come out of that economic development is where to. Yeah,
What else did we had budgeted, something else in that category is to the CRA. 4 of them, we're growing week 5, and they're coming back.
and then we have you Northwestern tax. The previous portion that we had transferred over, we still, I looked at that sheet today, there was still about $4,000 from downtown revitalization. That's sitting there, so that's still been coming over, I could go on there if you haven't seen this, so. Which is like the metal work that had to do, redo kind of senior center, getting that sign, you know, some of that, and then slowly coming through the other portion, so. The planters have been just, we just haven't done anything, we make. Use some of that for the startup of dirt and flowers.
So there's 4,000 you said left in there for that.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Yeah, no.
yeah. And I think it was like 4,100 maybe something. 4,000.
Last night, we're also discussing the CRA is going to be coming for an additional how much for lighting.
And that.
Not out of
So in the general, we had the loans to the PRA and full checking, we had already. Even before, you know, we decided. This was processing, we do the 125, but we had put that additional 50. Because they had some other property from the bow, in the big, they needed to. So.
we have it like on the expenses for the 50,000 extra give to them.
So, what? In addition, 50, it shows the 175 and the 106 area on the expense side.
Okay.
So 125 plus 50.
And the loan repayments on the 50,000 that you guys had already done the pay then. For the. Matching funds for the housing project.
When you look at the memorial donations or the grants and bonds, a lot of those are just placeholders, they're in case of. So in case we get a major donor that comes in and says, hey, I wanna give $100,000 to the city and earmark it for this project, well, we have to have it on the income side as well as the expense side, and that's why those are always a net zero. If it's 150 on the income side, it's 150 on the expense side, same way with your grants and bonds. We were to apply for and receive a grant for land and water conservation from the trail.
Yeah, it just gets hard to follow because we take it in grants and bonds as kind of like fake money, but then we see it. It's usually capital outlay in rent. And so then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the funny money expense and what's the real money
Sure,
expense?
yeah.
Because if I commit to 700,000 and we don't get 500 in. What about, not good.
And it's hard because sometimes memorial and donations to the parks, for example, like, we just got a donation for part of the rehab to the memorial bench. We have the money that's there, it's kind of this grant, we usually leave it in the full cash, otherwise we put it in the memorial and donation account at year end, and then we still have that expenditure, but the revenue is in the prior years. Sometimes that gets a little bit. Well, it's like few years, it wasn't that this was happening the whole time I've been here, but I feel like the last few years that we've had a lot of more kind of just projects kind of better, bigger, or just and quite a few of them like have like that done with downtown projects and Excel sheet, but I keep track of all of that so that we're balancing and making sure that all in keeping track, which is for the cemetery project with the flagpoles. We had some weird stuff happen there, so we're continually trying to track them and things too, so.
And they all do have, like, you see grants and bonds on top on the income side. You're gonna see grant expense on the expense side, but sometimes it is capital out. It needs to be justified under capital outlay due to the threshold. Therefore, it goes under capital outlay, but we're still not exceeding budget. I mean, it's a wash because it's all within that. Overall, we're not exceeding.
No, I understand the logic, I don't pay. I was not to pay as close to these details as you guys, or I just lose track of what is actually coming in, and I totally understand, like, we have to budget in advance for money coming in. But we have a balanced sheet at the end of it, and if that money doesn't come in, that actually then means we're negative, right? Potentially spend the money that doesn't come in. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm looking at capital outlay in each of the departments. What money is actually coming out of our cash and what money is potentially coming out if we get a donation. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that? Yeah.
Well, and right now, they're all.
That in most of them,
Yeah.
except for the airport and the. We're trying to touch more of that much stuff, but, and the airport, the thing with airport projects that are weird too is like. You just wait for the federal money sometimes, so like we've paid part of it this year, but the federal money hasn't come in and it may not come in for next fiscal year. So some of that then is out of cash until that money comes.
So right now, it's a grant and bond on the income, it's a grant expense. On the expense, it's just when Jesse goes to actually put it into the whatever fund, capital outlay, then you would see it as capital outlay, but on the actual
Looking at the airport,
budget sheets right now, it's income expense. Memorial donations and memorial donations, grant income, and grant expense.
but for the airport right now, like grants and bonds income is 600,000. Grant expense is nothing, but capital outlay is 617,090.
And
So
So project.
no exception there with that. We already know what the project is.
right, I just have to keep track of it in my head because
And
it's just a bunch of money. And I
And
can't
we
remember.
had the ARPA funds, we did get that collected, but that was on prior fiscal year's expenses, so like that just came in then this year. So it's sitting there for that, yeah.
That's what's really, that's where Jesse comes into play, because when we have multiple years where it tracks over year after year and we don't get, like, we apply for those funds and we don't get them until September of the following year, or August of the following year, and you're like, well, what's that anomaly? What's that? How come we got 22,000 extra dollars here? That's actually a credit to last year.
That's what gets hard for us, just because we're not in it every day, and
Yeah.
ultimately, we're signing off on this, right? So if I'm signing off on 700,000, but 500 of that is funny money. It's a risk for me, it feels. I don't know if there's a better way to keep track of it, like, does anybody have any ideas? Do you feel the same? No, I mean, I follow it when we're talking about it in that moment, and so that I just keep running with that, but.
Well, and
It
that,
feels like this year we have a lot of moving parts in and out of different accounts and funds, and I'm trying to make sure. Got it all accounted for in my head.
and that's where Jesse does an excellent job with in the financials and receiving financials.
Yeah,
and building
that's really the
plans.
only place we have to go back to financial
Mhm. Yeah.
when they're provided and then. Line item them here. All right, just making sure I wasn't skipping an easier option.
Any other questions concerning the budget hearing?
So,
We'll go ahead and close the budget hearing now. I guess. 6:20. Well, I have to, oh, even though no one's here,
I was like, I don't know if you actually stated it.
is there any public comment on the budget hearing? Come on, Tracy. Minimal common sense still.
yeah, that's true.
Thank you for keeping me straight.
Documenting what happened.
All right, now, since there is no public comment on the public hearing, I am gonna close our public hearing on the budget final tax request for fiscal year 2024-25 at 6:28. Thank you so much, Tracy, for telling us and giving us a brief on what we need to do and keeping us all and helping Jessie with all of the questions we asked her and then she asked you and.
Yeah, she did a good job, so.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing Tracy and the team in October for audit.
Yep.
Looking forward to
Passing
getting.
the budget, never ending cycle with time. Hey, Tracy, thanks,
Thank you.
Does council have anything tonight? If you wanted to, you can.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
Any last questions or anything about any line items before we adjourn?
Yes, the one that was in the parking lot, those. Wondered how that was, how that was gonna work.
All right, then we will adjourn at 6:30.
The exact same thing.